Welcome to the Nord Show, a podcast about all things movies and games, where we sit down with some creators to discuss and get their takes on some of their favorite movies and games. I am your host, Joe Aragon. You may know me from TikTok as Cinema Joe, and I'm joined today by Legend of Total War. We'll be chatting about their experience creating content, Total War, and answering some of the community questions at the end. Legend, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing well. Excited to have you. I have a lot of questions about Total War, but also you chose an MCU movie, a passion of mine, of many people's. There's gonna be a lot of deep dives today into the movie section of this podcast, so I'm excited to get into that.
Yeah, me too.
But before we dive in, make sure to follow us on Spotify, leave a 5-star review on Apple, drop a review, and tell us what movie you guys want to cover in the future. And of course, subscribe to NordVPN YouTube channel. All right, let's get this started. Legend, you are a master at Total War, over 400,000 subscribers on YouTube, and from what I learned, a big MCU fan. Let's start simple first. Why did you start creating content, but specifically, why did you start creating content around Total War?
I started in 2013, and it was really just for bragging rights. That was initially. Just wanted to show off. But then I just kept going, and eventually it sort of became profitable. And so if you can turn a passion into a career, then that's really the dream. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do. Mix pleasure with business as much as possible.
Yeah.
And it's been really good so far.
How would you explain Total War to somebody I'm pretty, I say, efficient in my gaming. I play a lot of different games, but even Total War to me is a little foreign.
Yeah.
How would you explain Total War to somebody who's never heard of it?
Yeah, it's very niche for people that are sort of outside the strategy gaming circles. But the simplest explanation to it is turn-based strategy, real-time battles.
Oh, I didn't know it was turn-based. Okay, interesting. Now, is Total War... I've watched a few videos. Actually, I watched a few of your videos. Now, there are specifically real-life empires, or can they be fictional empires as well?
So there's loads of different Total War games. There are historical Total War games, and there's fantasy Total War games. The historical Total War games basically take you to a historical setting and then just let you play around with it. So, for example, you might be interested in the Roman times. Set you in at 272 BC, play as any of the countries in the Mediterranean, and then carve your own empire. Do things historically, do things ahistorically. It's entirely up to you. But with the fantasy ones, it's sort of like you take the fantasy setting, same sort of thing. You take the fantasy characters and you carve out your empire with them.
Would you gravitate towards more the history one or fantasy one?
I don't actually mind whether it's history or fantasy. I just prefer that the game be good. That's it. Yeah.
That's very fair.
It's the formula that I'm attracted to, not the setting.
Got it. That makes sense. And did you start out immediately with Total War from creating content line? It was a different game you started out with?
Total War was where it started. Yeah.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
And it's been like that since the beginning?
Yeah. I've had a few divergents here and there. Had to take a few breaks from Total War.
I was going to say, do you have anything you play outside Total War that you also make content on? Or is there anything like...
It's like 99% of what I make is Total War. But every now and again, I'll throw a Skyrim live stream in there.
Oh, there we go. We go. Okay. And anything else besides Total War that you play offline that people don't know about? Like you secretly play a lot of any shooters, anything like that?
I actually don't play any first-person shooters. They just don't do it for me.
That's very fair.
Really like Anno 1800. I can get lost into a Factorio game for forever.
Interesting. Okay.
Basically, any kinds of logistics, strategy, any kind of management type games. I don't know. They just appeal to me.
That's very fair. I know it's such a neat, like you said, a very niche side of the gaming community. But it was really eye-opening for me when I was watching your videos, just how many people there are in that community. Like it's a really, really packed community. People are super passionate about this type of game.
Yeah, very passionate. Yeah.
Which leads me to my next question. You've done a really great job building this community
thanks.
over Total War. What is the favorite thing you've built about the community? What's your favorite thing about the community that you really kind of fostered?
I think you said it best, that it's a very passionate community. They are the kind of people that if the game is good, they are just super satisfied. They're very easy to please when everything is going smoothly. But that also comes with a drawback when things aren't going smoothly. Very difficult to please. So it can be a bit of a roller coaster ride with them.
Got it.
But every step of the way, it's nothing but passion.
That's great. kind of going back to Total War, and this is just my curiosity about the game because it's one of those things where kind of like fighting games for me as well. I'm terrible at them, terrible at strategy games, but I love to watch them or watch people play them because they're much better than me. Is Total War competitive against people? Like, is it PvP or is it more PvE style?
It can be either. I think there are more people that play PvE, the single player
Interesting.
experience, than the multiplayer. The multiplayer is definitely there, but I don't think they've really invested a lot of resources into making a really competitive multiplayer experience just yet.
Mhm.
They're starting to, and they've done certain things in the past that they've abandoned, but like comparing it to other strategy games or even other games, the multiplayer experience in Total War is a little bit minimal,
Got it.
but
Okay.
it is
And
there.
as somebody who's played Total War for almost a decade, do you ever find it too easy to play the AI at all? Is it always a challenge with some way?
Even on the hardest difficulty, I do find the AI quite easy to deal with. So a lot of the times,
Uh-huh.
what I try to do is rather than break it down into whether or not we win or lose, try to do the most I can in the minimum amount of time. Try
Oh.
to beat what I have done before. Try to embarrass the AI further than what I've ever done before. That kind of stuff. So that's where the challenge comes in it for me. It's not about whether or not I'm going to win or lose the campaign, but it's about
Mhm.
how well I can, destroy them,
Beat
sort of
them.
thing. Yeah,
That's fair, that's fair. Any particular empire or faction that you always run or that your favorite faction or empire
yeah.
that you always
With
play as?
with Warhammer, I play Skaven a lot. So Skaven are
Uh-huh.
the rat men, which I
Oh,
initially hated when I
and
first
now it's
played
your
them. I was
favorite?
like, oh, these guys are gross. But now I just love them.
Alright, that's fair, that's fair. How much does this game relate to something like Sid Meier's Civilization or like Civ 6?
Yeah. So Civilization is just a turn-based game,
Uh-huh.
strategy game. So you play this. You got your cities, you found your cities, build your units over the course of various turns. Um,
Mhm.
Whereas in Total War, you do all that kind of management side of things in the turn-based stuff, but then you build your armies, and if your army clashes with another army, you go into a real-time battle, and the
Oh,
units that you have on
interesting.
the strategic map will be reflected on the tactical map, and the damage that you take and dish out on the tactical map will be exactly reflected back on the strategic map.
Interesting, interesting. I didn't know that was an added layer to it. Do
Yeah.
you dabble in Civ 6 or in any of the Civ
I
games or
do really like Civilization. In fact, I was into Civilization before Total War,
Uh-huh.
but ever since Total War, I don't play as much Civ anymore. I think it really comes down to that extra layer of having the battles,
Yeah.
and I think I just prefer like one particular setting as opposed to going throughout the various different ages.
What would advice would you give somebody like me? I downloaded Civ 6 because I wanted something to play on my Switch while I was like late at night at bed trying to learn something. And it's really complicated, let's just be honest. It's very, very complicated, a lot of layers to it. Same with Total War. What advice do you give to beginners who are like, I want to try this out? What would you say to them? Like, what's any warnings, anything like that?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's any warnings. Play on easy difficulty. There's no embarrassment I think anyone should have
Uh-huh.
by playing on easy difficulty. It's there for people who don't know how to play the game because it's
Mhm.
very forgiving. And if you're looking for someone to watch for Civilization, check out Potato McWhiskey. Sorry,
Okay,
Potato
okay.
McWhiskey. Check him out. So he's always streaming. He's got really good videos. He's the
Perfect.
go-to person for watching Civilization 6 content. And the great thing about these kind of really in-depth strategy games is that not being great at them is sometimes the most fun part of the game.
Uh-huh.
Making mistakes and learning how to play them. So just play on easy difficulty. Just you know, play around. Don't worry about mastering it because if you lose, don't worry about it. Just start another game.
Got it.
Because most people who get to sort of my point where you've already put in 1,000 hours into it, we've already played these factions over and over and over again, but we do it again to
Uh-huh.
keep challenging ourselves because every campaign I will make some mistakes and I just try to learn from them. It's almost impossible to avoid them.
Yeah. All right. Good advice from the master of Total War. And of course, if you're want to get into Total War, check out Legend of Total War's videos,
Yeah.
which like I said, it's such an interesting niche of gaming that I've been dying to get into because, yeah, sometimes I don't want to rack my brain playing a battle royale and be super intense and sweaty trying to win. And I just want to sit at my computer and try to strategize, but I'm not the
The
best
thing
at it.
is, Total War does actually very much cater to the casual player. If you play on easy difficulty, it's really
Mm,
difficult to lose.
okay,
Um,
that's good to know.
I play on the hardest difficulty, majority of the time, and that is where it's geared just against the player. Like you have to be on edge all the time. So if you watch me and think to yourself, "Wow, this game is too hard," just keep in mind that the difference between easy difficulty and legendary difficulty is enormous.
Yeah. Okay,
Like
that's
I
a
could
really
do
good
easy
thing.
difficulty blindfolded, basically.
That's really good to know. I think a lot of people might feel that way, intimidated when they see someone like you play on YouTube. It's like, wow, I don't know if I can get into that because you're so good at it and it's so intense. But it is really good advice that start on the easy difficulty
Start
first.
easy difficulty. You basically can't go wrong. And if you make a mistake, that's okay. Nobody's there to watch anyway.
Not the end of the world,
Yeah,
correct?
just start
S-
another game. The game
So
doesn't
if
really
you're
track it.
exactly, so if you're so into Total War, obviously it has a lot to do with history. Does this translate to like your movie tastes as well? Are you a big like history drama person?
In many ways, they do sort of connect with each other because the Total War game I first got into was Rome Total War, where I fell in love with like the history of the Roman Empire, and then I became obsessed with watching like any movie to do with the Roman Empire. Like my favorite movie of all time is Gladiator, even though it's totally not historically accurate. Um,
Is it not?
no, no, not at all.
Do you know which parts? I'm curious. I
Just
like
the whole
Gladiator
thing.
too.
The whole
Oh, wait.
thing. Yeah, yeah.
I should have expected that, but I like
Yeah.
to pretend like I
It's
knew.
like
So,
it's like there's elements of it. It's a historical
yeah.
starting, and then they just take it off the road straight away.
That's okay.
But that's okay because it's historically authentic. Like it could have
Yeah.
happened that way.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's
Fair,
really just
fair.
about what it was like being in that time, and like not that you would want to live there, but it's interesting to watch it, and it's an
Yeah,
interesting
of course. Kind
interesting
of be in that
plot.
perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, when I sent you a list of movies, I half expected when I sent you the list of movies that you would pick something like Gladiator or something around, more historical drama. And then you responded, "Hey, let's do an MCU movie." And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, I'll do an MCU movie." I haven't had a chance to talk about the MCU yet. I've seen everything. You mentioned you've seen everything. And we focused in, and you eventually picked Spider Man No Way Home as the movie to really discuss here. Why Spider Man over maybe anything else?
I think out of all the various like franchises within the MCU, I think that they did the best job with Spider-Man.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think some people would argue Captain America is
That
up
would
there
have
with
been my
Spider-Man.
second best one. I would have
Oh,
said
there we
that
go.
was like Captain America Civil War was so good. And I don't particularly like Captain America. Um,
Interesting.
but I still think that Spider-Man was just a bit above that.
Okay. Very fair. So you pick No Way Home for, I think an obvious reason. It's the sixth highest grossing movie of all time, made ton of money. Tell me your experience watching No Way Home. Did you watch it in theaters or did you
I
watch it
did
at
watch it in the
home?
theater. It's
How was
just
that?
fan service. That's what it was through and through. And that's
Yeah.
for somebody that's watched so much of the MCU, when you're watching I don't know, what is it, like the 15th movie? To just have a movie that's just like pays off all of the other times that you've watched a Spider-Man movie and Doctor Strange movies and all these other kind of movies. And it's just like, here you go, here's a reward for you having watched those previous movies. And that's what I feel like they did so well with No Way Home. It was just a reward for the fans,
Okay.
you know.
Favorite Spider-Man? I mean, is the natural next question.
I think
Toby,
Tom
Andrew,
Holland has done the
Tom?
best job as Spider-Man. Definitely. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, it's maybe the best job. Is that your favorite as well?
Yes. Yeah. That's my favorite.
Are you a
Yeah.
fan of the Tobey Maguire ones at all?
I am a
The
fan
Sam
of
Raimi
the
ones?
Tobey Maguire ones. I think he did a good job. Just because Tom Holland's my favorite doesn't mean that Tobey Maguire one isn't also really good. I did watch the first
Okay,
three Spider-Man movies. I can't remember if I watched them in the cinemas, but I have watched them multiple times. In fact,
fair.
the Andrew Garfield ones, I only recently watched the first Amazing Spider-Man, but I
Yeah.
even now haven't watched the second one.
Oh, interesting. The second one is it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, it's the
I
one that's
just wasn't really
panned
into
the
it.
most.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say check it out maybe one day if it's on
Yeah.
TV. Throw it on.
Just
It's
waiting for it
really
to show up
long.
on Netflix.
There you go. Yeah, eventually it'll hopefully be there. Um, how was the theater when you saw No Way Home? I mean, 1 to 10, 10 being the most craziest experience you ever had, people going crazy. Was it at level 10 there?
Oh, it was like a 9. I think the
Interesting.
craziest thing was when I saw The Dark Knight in cinema. That was definitely a 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. What? Okay, I saw Dark Knight in cinemas as well, but I
Yeah.
saw it a little bit late, like 2 or 3 weeks after it came
Yeah,
out.
that had to be a
But
10.
interesting. Okay.
Where like people
I
were just
was.
like gasping because the plot
Oh,
was twisting
wow.
and turning, and even I was like at the edge of my seats. Like I was like, "Wow, this is actually a really good movie." Like
Okay.
Spider-Man
Okay.
was just like almost there, almost there, but it
Did
had more
people in your
fan
theater?
service. Sorry, go on.
It had a lot more. No, no, you're good. It did have a more fan service. Did people in your theater react to the reveal of Daredevil in your theater?
Not so much because like I was there with my wife and she had no idea 'cause she hasn't seen Daredevil, but I was like, "Oh, look, it's Daredevil," and some people be like, "That's Daredevil," but not everyone. I thought that's what I'm talking about with like fan service, that stuff like that. Like you had to watch the Daredevil show from Netflix to even know who that character was.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I think in my theater, I and maybe 5 or 6 other people reacted to it, but most people, including my wife, were like, "Is that somebody I'm supposed to know?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's Daredevil," which but I get it, like you said, you had to watch the Netflix series to really know. Have you seen Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness yet?
I haven't seen it yet. No,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I will
I
definitely watch
have.
it, but I haven't seen it. You've seen it, okay?
I've seen it. I won't say anything, promise. I
Yeah,
will keep your expectations completely,
yeah.
unbothered. That would
I've
be
heard it's
blind as
bonkers.
possible.
I've heard it's bonkers
Uh,
mad.
it's stuff. Again, I'm gonna keep it as neutral as possible, but as someone who hasn't seen it yet, what do you want to see? What is, like, the your dream thing to happen in Multiverse of Madness?
Oh, just make it nuts. Just blow my mind. Make it crazy. Bring back characters we haven't seen for a while. You know, bring back a Dormammu reference.
Okay,
Just
okay,
just more fan service. That's what I really want from MCU. Just more fan service. Bring back characters that we've already had before,
okay.
and
Is there
just
anybody specific
twist
that
it.
you're, like, dying to see? You wanna see, like, a Wolverine or
Yeah, I would love
the
to
old
see
Fantastic Four or
characters from the Sony Marvel movies slowly make their way into the MCU.
Oh,
Specifically,
okay.
Deadpool. I really want to see Deadpool in
Oh,
there.
yeah, that'd be yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Well, we shall see, or you'll see very, very soon. By the time this episode comes out, it's gonna be probably at least a month from now, so people had already seen it. So they're probably laughing at us while we're talking because 'cause they'll know what happened.
Did
Um,
I? Did I?
alright.
Okay.
No, 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 I'm keeping it
I was.
as,
Yeah. Okay, that's
I
fine.
won't say anything, and then once you see it, you can message me and say,
All
A,
right,
B,
I
C,
will.
D,
I
E, F,
will.
G.
Yeah, that's good. Because yeah,
Uh,
with Wolverine, I thought that Hugh Jackman wasn't going to reprise the character again. I'd love him to enter the MCU, but I thought that he had been finished.
yeah, there's a lot of speculation on whether or not he'll come back, and then a lot of people already fan casting who they want to play Wolverine. There's a lot of people on the Daniel Radcliffe train for him to play Wolverine. They want, I guess, Harry Potter to play Wolverine, which I've seen some like fan edits of him looking like him. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what they end up doing with all of that. If you didn't pick Spider-Man, you said you'd pick Captain America: Civil War. How did you feel about the conclusion to the entire saga of Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet? Did you think Endgame was a satisfying conclusion to all?
Yeah, it was definitely a satisfying conclusion. I think they kind of wrapped it up really quickly.
Mhm.
I think they could have spent a little bit more time wrapping things up a bit. Um, I was pretty satisfied with the ending for Captain America. I think he got what he finally deserved in the end.
Okay, very fair, very fair. I know I talked to some people who say they love the ending, and some people are saying they're kind of iffy on the ending. Some people like that Tony Stark, perish. Some people don't like it. And I'm kind of sitting in the middle, like I kind of where you're at. I like Steve's ending. Not sure how I feel about Iron Man exiting, but it's not the worst thing in the world either.
Yeah. Well, you got to have some characters die. I think, and these sort of things. I mean, I think if a character dies and you miss them, it just means that they did a good job building that character up. And
Good point.
Robert Downey Jr. had been part of the MCU in so many movies for such a long time. I think he deserved a bit of a break.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a long time since
yeah,
2008.
yeah.
So it was a very, very long time. Did you see Endgame in theaters as well in
I did.
cinemas?
Yeah,
And how was that?
that was also really good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel
another sort
like
of like
that
8 or 9 out of 10 cinema experience.
Yeah, that was the moment in movies that I remember the most out of any Marvel movie, out of maybe any theater experience. I've never been in a crowd where everybody collectively gasped when Cap picked up the hammer or when he fought Thanos or when they all came out of the
Personally,
portals.
I felt that Infinity War was actually better than Endgame.
Interesting. Now I've seen that opinion online a lot, and it's a very popular one. Like you wouldn't be alone in that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people who say Infinity War is the better of the two.
Yeah.
Why Infinity over Endgame?
I think they did a better job setting it up, and
Mhm.
it was really one of the only Marvel movies where it had such a like traumatic ending, but
Mhm.
it was satisfying. Like you knew it wasn't over; they weren't done,
Yeah.
but it wasn't over, and it's good to see the good guys not win all the time.
Yes, good point. Yeah.
They have a real challenge on their hands there, and
Yeah.
which of course was paid off all throughout Endgame.
And I think that that's the one issue a lot of people have with the MCU is that there's really no sense of consequence sometimes. Every movie has a pretty little bow that ends the movie. They beat the bad guy, everybody kind of
And that's
goes
the thing.
home.
The movies that have consequences are the best ones, like Captain America: Civil
Exactly.
War, loads of
Yeah.
consequences. Infinity War, and even No Way Home, loads of
Mhm.
consequences. Nobody even knows who he is now. Well,
Yeah,
spoiler.
exactly. Yeah.
Haven't
Well,
seen it.
No Way Home has been out long
Yeah,
enough, and they're at this point
people will
advertising it on
still be
TV.
like, "Oh, what? I didn't know that."
Well, by the time this comes
Yeah,
out, if it's 2 months from now, a month from now,
yeah,
and they haven't seen it or don't know, I don't feel as bad anymore.
yeah. My
If
thoughts
it's
are if it's out of cinema and you haven't watched
uh,
it, then that's your fault. If you hear
it's free
spoilers,
game
it's
at
your
that point.
fault. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah,
At this point on TV now, I saw a commercial for the movie, and they showed all 3 Spider-Man in it. So I was
yeah,
like, if the TV's showing a commercial with it,
yeah,
I am free to talk about it at this
yeah,
point. So,
yeah.
but you're right. You're 100% right about the consequences. My favorite MCU movies are all ones with a lot of consequence.
Yeah,
I think the
same.
only one that I love that maybe doesn't have a lot of consequence at the end is Ragnarok.
I
I'm a
was
big fan of
just
Thor
thinking
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok. That
Yeah.
was just because that one was just fun. That was just a fun movie.
Yes.
They just
Yeah.
took the characters and they took them for a ride, and
Yeah.
we got to go with
Yeah.
them. It was just
Ragnarok.
fun.
it's
Yeah,
it's fun. It's maybe one of the funniest ones
yeah.
out of all of them as well.
That's the thing because the
Um,
previous two Thor movies were all serious, and I've got to
yeah.
get the what was it called, the ether, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ragnarok just took it on a turn and just made it all fun. Just
Yeah.
took all the seriousness out. Well, not all the seriousness, but a lot of the seriousness out of it.
Yeah, they did. They definitely did a better job with Thor's character. I think if you talk to a lot of people, they'll say, if you ask them, what's the worst MCU movies? They'll tend to say Thor
Yeah,
2,
Thor too.
Thor 1, Iron Man 2, or Incredible Hulk are usually always on people's bottoms. And but Ragnarok is, like you said, completely flips it upside down, and people love Ragnarok, including myself.
Yeah.
Natural next question. Are you excited for Thor Love and Thunder? Are
I am,
you
yeah. Well, as long as they keep along those lines and just make it fun. I think that's where Thor is going now. The seriousness of it is over, um, unless they start something else new. But yeah, just I like what I'm hearing about it, and I'm looking forward to watching it. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know much. I try to stay out of MCU news because I like going in blind as possible, and I'll usually see it about a week before most people. And I'm always really excited, but sometimes that's not as fun going to see it at like a press screening because I'm not surrounded by really big fans, and so I'm surrounded by other people who are just writing it to review it. So I'm excited for Thor: Love and Thunder, though. I'm excited for Natalie Portman to show up as Thor as well. There's a lot to be excited about for that movie. All right. Well, let's take a quick break and we'll jump into some top 3 segments because if we don't, we'll end up talking about every single movie in the MCU.
yeah.
So, we'll be right back. Are you missing out on your favorite show because it's not available in your region? Trying to keep your private time private? Well, let me introduce you to NordVPN. If you're bored of US Netflix, why not take a spin on the UK? Using NordVPN and at a click of a button, you can do just that. No need to travel to Japan for your favorite anime when NordVPN brings it right to you. With 5,000 plus server options, no show is out of your reach. Make sure to use Legend of Total War's link in the description of the episode to get a great deal on NordVPN and support Legend's channel. All right. Top three segment. We kind of talked about it a little bit. If you could definitively pick your three favorite MCU movies, could you?
Well, I always have trouble with this stuff, but I think I could. Yeah, I'd have to say ones we've already talked about. No Way Home, Civil War, and Ragnarok.
Civil War. So a lot of people would choose Winter Soldier over Civil War. Is there any reason you like Civil War more than Winter Soldier?
I think the stakes were just way higher in Civil War. It's the movie that introduced Spiderman. It had more fan service, but also way more consequences. And in many ways, Civil War concluded the plots that were began with Winter Soldier.
Got it. Okay. That's a great answer. I forgot how much I liked Civil War until I watched it maybe 2 weeks ago on TV, and I forgot how good it was. The whole airport scene is great. And then the final fight scene with Cap and Iron Man and the Winter Soldier is one of my favorite moments in the MCU. So it's a good choice over Winter Soldier. I get it.
Yeah, Winter Soldier's good as well, but my favorite of the three Captain America movies is definitely Civil War.
I think if I were to narrow mine down to three, I think I ultimately would choose Winter Soldier only because I like a few of the fight scenes more in Winter Soldier. Big Ragnarok fan like you, and I think I'm a really big fan of the first Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that one was.
They're awesome as well. They would have been in my top five.
Okay, fair. I feel like that's where things really got fun with MCU. All these new characters and that team, the chemistry between everybody's great. I ended up really liking the Guardians of the Galaxy way more than I thought. Glad that you liked them as well. Do you have a favorite Guardian?
I've already forgot his name. The one that doesn't like metaphors.
Drax.
Drax, that's it. Yeah.
Drax. I like how you remembered him as the guy who doesn't like metaphors.
Yeah. His name just escaped me there. Unlike metaphors, which you'll catch.
You're right. This is true. He doesn't like metaphors. Drax is probably my favorite as well. I like Drax and Rocket a lot. But Drax is a good answer. Okay. We've talked a lot about MCU. You kind of hinted towards other movies. What are some of your favorite movies outside MCU? Do you have three favorite ones? Do you gravitate towards any type of genre?
Yeah, I like I like movies where the world gets expanded upon more and more over time. So I tend to gravitate towards movies like Gladiator or Kingdom of Heaven, those kind of ones, because these are settings that I'm at least familiar with, where there's a lot of references that I will get that a lot of other people probably won't get. And the more that I watch them, the more I can keep picking up more things from it. Whereas suppose like a comedy, I like comedies, but I'll watch it once, it was funny. Then I watch it the second time and it's not quite as funny. But with these historical sort of epic sort of movies, the more times I watch them, I get something new out of it every single time. I've watched Kingdom of Heavens probably 10 times now.
Interesting. I am really curious now to pick your brain on a movie like 300, where I guess rooted in history, but would you say is like Gladiator not accurate at all? Or I don't know much about the history of it.
Yeah, I think with 300, that's actually an interesting one because you could argue that is kind of historically accurate because the story, it's all just about that one battle, and it did kind of happen that way with a few deviations.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, there were no. They didn't have rhinoceroses or something or huge monsters coming at you. They took some liberties in that regard.
This is true. It's true. I don't think that happened in history.
But they stood and fought to the death at that battle there, which is essentially ignited all of Greece to fight up against the Persians, which was kind of reflected in the sequel. Wait, no, that was a prequel.
300. I actually never saw the second movie. It was a prequel, I guess, but I never saw it.
Yeah, I only saw that fairly recently.
Interesting. Okay, how do you feel about a movie like? Have you seen Troy?
I have seen Troy. Yeah, Troy's good.
How do you feel about Troy?
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's fun. I've watched it a few times. It's a good movie. Yeah, I like it.
Okay, I feel like when it comes to historical dramas, I tend to really lean towards the more fantastical ones, I guess, based off some type of mythology, which Troy kind of is dipped in, right? The Legend of Achilles and things like that. I don't know how you feel about movies with a lot of mythology in it.
I'm fine with it as long as they do it sort of respectfully, I suppose, and don't try to force feed you like, oh, this is what really happened, sort of thing. You know, if you're gonna put some mythology in there, just basically make it seem like this isn't really part of our world anyway, and just make it full mythos, sort of thing.
Perfect. That makes sense. All right. Any movies outside of historical dramas, fantasies, anything like if you said it out loud right now on the podcast, someone would be like, "Whoa, Legend likes that movie." Is there like a drama or a horror or an action movie that's not fantasy based that people would be surprised you really like?
It's hard to say because, like, I'll give anything a go. Um, I suppose some of the movies that I might watch with my wife, like, I'm not gonna name specific ones, but I'll enjoy
Why
them
not?
because I
Hey,
can't remember them.
okay, there we go.
But I
That's a
enjoy
fair
them at the
answer.
time. Yeah, I can't name them just because I can't remember them anymore.
That's very okay. That's a
Yeah.
really good answer. I'm a big fan of romance comedies too. I'm not
Yeah.
afraid to
Yeah,
admit
I
it.
don't mind the odd romance comedy, but at the same time, I will forget about them, short
Okay.
time after I watch them.
How do you feel about sci-fi? Like
Oh,
a
I
big
love
science
sci-fi.
fiction
Yeah,
epic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Did you
Star
check
Trek's
out
great.
Dune last year?
I did watch Dune. I thought it was way too slow.
Oh, interesting. I thought maybe you would like it because it was really heavily. I feel like there's a lot of just
Yeah, it seems like
context
it's a
you need
lot
to
of
know
world
about.
building, and it's still there in
Exactly.
my mind a little bit. But I feel like that's the kind of movie where I'm going to need to wait to the second and third one before I really get invested in it because they've
Okay,
set things up, and I'm just not quite invested yet. But I'm
that's
willing to give
fair.
it a chance.
Okay, all right, all right. And I feel like past 6 guests of mine have all said they're big Lord of the Rings fans. Are you also a big Lord of the Rings
I
fan?
was a big Lord of the Rings fan, so I got a very weird history with Lord of the Rings. When the movies first came out, I was obsessed with them. Just watched them over and over and over again. Played every single Lord of the Rings movie, and then I read the book. And after that, I put the book down and I said, "I'm done." And that's it.
Why?
That was just the end of Lord of the Rings for me.
Are the books that much better? Is that why?
No, I hated the book.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting. You didn't like the books at
yeah, I
all.
really,
Okay,
really didn't like the. I had to force myself to read them. After reading the book, I
interesting.
just couldn't absorb any
I
more Lord of the
I
Rings. I
don't
was
think
just
I've ever
like,
heard that before.
I'm just
Okay.
done. And now, whenever I watch Lord of the Rings, I had like pure apathy.
Oh, wow. Okay, okay.
I
Well,
think I
it's
think
fine.
Lord of the
It's
Rings is
fine.
just one of those things where it actually I consumed so much of it that I
Mhm.
actually built up such a huge tolerance that now I just can't be affected by it anymore.
That's fair. I definitely have that with some franchises where I consumed so much of it when I was younger, and now I'm just like, I don't need to watch it anymore type deal. So I get that feeling. I get that feeling. Okay. All
So
right.
I to say that I dislike Lord of the Rings would be disingenuous. I do love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I've consumed about as much as I
Consume
can
so
of it. Yeah,
much.
that's all I can
Got it.
say. Yeah.
Okay. Perfectly said. I don't think anybody will be angry at you. Don't worry. I
You'd
don't
be
think we'll get any hate
surprised.
mail. It's true. Fandoms of any type of franchise, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Star Trek, anything, we'll get up in arms about. I guess the littlest comment, but don't worry. I'll accept all the mail and on your behalf.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Let's move to some final questions on Twitter because it kind of relates to what we've been talking about this entire time. We got some really great questions. You got a lot of good ones, actually. A lot that I was really interested in. One that you got was, how do you think the X-Men will be introduced into the MCU? And if there is, I'm curious to know, is there a specific X-Men you want to see in the
I would
MCU?
love to see that. If they're gonna do that, um, they need to pick a character that's gonna have an actor that's gonna stick with it. They can't just keep shifting the actor. I really don't like it when they do that. Um, and I think they need to start small and just bring them in a little bit at a time. Um, don't just make an MCU X-Men with all new cast. I think they've still got really good cast that was in this sort of the second phase X-Men, and they've still got really good cast from the first phase X-Men. So, I think if they were going to bring Magneto, I think it makes more sense to bring Michael Fassbender in. Even though I love Ian McKellen, it's a better investment, I think. This is going to sound really cruel because Ian
No.
McKellen is just he's just really old now. I
Yes, yeah,
think,
you're right. I mean,
you
I
know,
think we both respect him greatly, but you're right. I mean, he's getting
this
up
is
there in
just the
age.
natural order of things. Michael Fassbender will probably be around a lot longer. And
Mhm.
he's a great Magneto as well. So,
He is, I agree.
because the character of Magneto is really good, but one of my favorite X-Men, well, he's not specifically an X-Men, but he's an X-Men character.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I would want to see him have like another 10-year life cycle within the MCU. That would be great. Wolverine is another great one. And of course, Dr. X and Quicksilver. Quicksilver was killed off of the MCU.
Yeah, and then did you end up watching WandaVision
I
at
did, yeah.
all? Yeah, so I
Yeah,
thought
they
they brought
brought
him back for a
that
second.
was so weird that they brought the actor from Quicksilver
The
um
newer
from the newer
X-Men
movies,
series.
yeah, from the X-Men movies into that. That was really weird. But I liked what they did
Yeah,
with it. Yeah.
I did too. I liked WandaVision a lot, actually, and I
Yeah.
was hoping that they would have done more with the Quicksilver. Maybe they will still, and who knows? We'll
Maybe
see.
they were just
Those are
testing the
all good
waters. They were
choices.
just gonna see what people thought of it.
Yeah, it's possible they are, and just like I say, it's possible they do something with
Because
him.
yeah,
I think those are good choices,
Quicksilver's
though.
moments in the newer, like the second wave X-Men movies, are some of the best in
Oh,
those
they're awesome.
movies. Yeah, so
Yeah.
bringing him into the MCU, I think would be a really good idea.
Yeah, a really smart idea, especially after killing off Quicksilver in Age of Ultron. It was such a weird decision to make.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it is what it is. Good choices on the X-Men. I'm a big fan of Nightcrawler. I want to see a really cool MCU Nightcrawler. I feel like that could be done really well if they make the right decisions, like you said, with character and cast choices.
Yeah, you've got to find an actor that can really commit to the role and that loves the role.
Mhm.
I think that's really important. You don't want to be
I agree.
recasting them halfway down the track.
I agree. I agree. Another question we got was from a username Leonidas, which ironically we talked about 300. They asked, which has a brighter future, the MCU or the DCEU? We haven't even talked about the DCEU.
I feel like
Do
the
you like it?
DCEU is a train wreck.
It is a train
It
wreck.
is
Let's
an
just be
absolute
honest.
train wreck.
There are
Um,
some movies I don't mind. Like I
yeah,
like the new Suicide Squad. I thought that was pretty good.
yeah. I haven't watched that. I've watched like
Uh,
I'm willing to invest a little bit into the DCEU, but I feel like they just don't have their story straight. They're trying too hard to play catch up. What they really need to
oh
do is
yeah.
just like get the beginnings correct. They basically did their Avengers movie way too early, and it was awful.
Mhm. Yeah, it wasn't
I
good.
think when I went and saw Justice League, that was one of the worst cinema experiences I've ever had because I fell
Wow.
asleep in the cinema.
Yeah. We have your best cinema experiences in
Yeah.
this episode and your worst one in the same episode.
It was
Wow.
just like, if you could just make the most generic superhero movie of all time, that's it. It was just
That's what was
bad.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're completely right. I'm not a big fan of the DCEU myself. Like I said, I like the Suicide Squad. I do think that's worth checking out because it
Mm.
was from James Gunn, who did Guardians of the
Yeah.
Galaxy. So if you liked Guardians of the Galaxy, I think you'll like Suicide Squad. It has that same vibe to it, but it's rated R and it's
Yeah.
much more brutal.
Yeah.
Um,
I think what they need to do with the DCEU is invest in their characters. I really don't understand why they fired or changed Superman. I think that Henry Cavill
yeah.
was doing just fine. The problem with Superman wasn't Superman, it was the writing.
Mhm.
The plot was terrible. He's a great Superman, but give him some good movies to actually do what he needs to do in them. And I
Yeah.
actually thought that I've already forgotten
Ben
his name.
Affleck?
Ben Affleck, that's it. He was a pretty
Gotcha.
good Batman, but I hear that Robert Pattinson is also a good Batman. So
He is. He is. You haven't
um,
seen that either, huh?
I haven't seen that yet either. I'm just not that
Ooh.
invested in the DCEU, and I
I'm
hear it's
just
slow
realizing
paced.
it.
And if it was 10 years ago, it'd be fine. I don't mind watching a really slow movie, but right now I need it. I got to move. I got stuff to do.
Yeah. It is a little slower, but more importantly, the Batman is 3 hours long.
Yeah, that's the
So
problem.
it's a commitment if you're gonna sit down and watch it. You could break up in parts, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a time commitment for
Yeah,
sure.
I'll just wait for it to show up on Netflix. Yeah, and
In Australia,
eventually
it's a-
Disney will buy the DC.
Yeah.
They'll buy Warner Brothers, and then I can see it on Disney Plus.
There we go. Do you happen to have HBO Max in
I
Australia?
don't. Well, I don't know if we've got HBO Max, but I don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to keep the
I've-
number of subscription services that we have to a relative minimum.
Fair. Fair, yeah, it can get out of hand too. I mean, especially because I'm barely learning that there are a lot of streaming services we have in the States that it's not everywhere else, and like Canada doesn't have HBO Max and things like that. But in the States, I think I have 7 or 6 subscriptions to 6 or 7 different streaming providers, and it's a lot. It's a
Yeah.
little overwhelming at
We
times. I
have
kind of wish
kind
it
of
was
like a
condensed in one.
2 streaming service maximum policy in our household because we know that if we get more than that, we won't get work done. You know, we got Netflix, we got Disney Plus, heaps of stuff on that. We're satisfied with that for now. We used to have Foxtel when Game of Thrones was there, and then Game of Thrones ended, and then we were done with Foxtel. They moved on to Disney Plus. Yeah.
Gotta know your Game of Thrones thoughts.
My Game
how
of
did you
Thrones thoughts
feel?
is the same as everyone else. Love Game of Thrones, hate season 8.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is it is the same as everyone else.
Everybody has the same
That's-
opinion because it's the correct opinion.
It is the correct opinion. It was. I remember watching that finale. I was actually on vacation when I watched that finale. I was not very happy. To
Yeah.
say the least. Oh well. Are you excited for the prequel series coming out?
Not really. Not really. We were watching a trailer of it before, and I just feel like, season 8,
I felt
really?
the
They're
same
going to have to
way.
start again, bringing my interest from. They have to rebuild trust from scratch. Because, like, don't break my heart with that season 8, stuff. You build me
That's
up for
funny.
7 years, 8 years,
Yeah.
9 years even, and then you just
Yeah.
bring it crashing down. How dare you, sort of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You said exactly how I feel. My wife showed me the trailer this morning. I was like, I don't think I care right now.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to really draw me back in because I do feel a little hesitant.
It was heartbreaking, the season 8 finale.
I
really was.
kind of like the moment with Arya and the Night King. That was a decent moment.
Yeah, I liked the fact that she was the one that finished him off. I think that entire episode could have been better.
I agree. It was
Maybe
really
not one
dark.
episode. It was
Yeah.
way too dark. Yeah, there was some good moments in it. But the fact that episode came out and then 2 episodes later was like the final episode, they just rushed it way too much. I think they really could have drawn out a few more episodes or even another season.
Another season.
It would have
yeah.
been fine. People would have watched it.
I agree with that. I totally agree. And obviously they were in kind of hot water because the final book isn't even out yet. And
Yeah.
so they had to kind of do their own thing. And clearly they lost sight of what they were doing.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's a heartbreaking moment. Every time I think about it, I get a little sad. So
yeah.
let's get to the last question of the episode. Coming from username Kyle, they asked, would you like to see Warhammer Universe get its own movie? Which is a perfect end question.
Yes and no.
Oh.
I would love to see like a Game of Thrones style Warhammer movie for Warhammer Fantasy where, all the different characters in different parts of the world slowly coming together over the course of 8 seasons. However, I don't think anyone will succeed in doing it justice. I think it'll be a low budget. It'll be done by people who don't care. It'll just be done for money. It'll be basically a passionless project. I just don't think that it's feasible for something like that to happen, but I would love it if it could. So basically,
Okay.
I'd love it. I just don't have confidence that it would be good.
That's a really good answer. How deep is the lore in Warhammer? Is there enough to make something like a solid
There's
series
too
of
much. That's the
shows?
problem.
Too
There is
much.
too much.
Oh, wow.
They tried to wrap it up
hmm
in this 5-book series called The End Times, and they forgot various plot lines.
Oh, wow. Okay. That makes sense then. Yeah, I didn't realize how deep the lore was, but you're 1,000% right. If you don't, because a lot of these writers, especially writers for video games, which video game movies are notoriously really bad.
Yeah.
They tend to get writers who never even played the games.
Yeah, if you want to do something like a Game of Thrones style movie or series for Warhammer, it can't just be like a standalone movie. It just won't work because Warhammer is so interconnected in this gigantic world and all these characters that have some way connections with each other. A standalone movie would just fall flat. You've got to either go hard and do the whole thing or just don't do it at all.
Yeah, and it sounds like, if they can't even do it for Game of Thrones, who knows
Yeah.
if anybody would really be on
Yeah,
board
it's
for
got to have a lot of passion. Like, I think it could be financially viable, but you got to have people working on it, like a lot of people working on it that are incredibly passionate. Without
Got
that
it.
passion, I just think it's doomed.
We'll make sure movie studios email you to get on board with the writing.
No,
That way we get it done right.
There's way better people than me to do that. I'd just be like, I can tell them what they shouldn't do. Don't half-ass it. Basically, that's the.
Well, sometimes that's what they need. They need somebody to tell them, "Don't do that," because I mean, we've seen it from history. The movie studios make some bad decisions sometimes. So, all right. Well, Legend, we could keep talking forever, but we have to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being on here. We'll make sure to link all of your information in the description of the episode. Had a great time talking about so much.
Me too.
Other than that, make sure to follow The Nord Show on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Again, Legend, thank you so much for being here. I will have to hit you up when the Game of Thrones prequels come out to see if it drags us back in.
Okay, yeah. I'll probably check them out, but I think I'll go in with I'll just put a toe in the water and don't get too invested in it.
There you go. That's good advice for everybody, including the listeners.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and have a great day.